Hello there, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, and welcome to the Mystery Monster Manual. If you've ended up reading the title, ended up checking out the thumbnail, all of that stuff, then that's the thing that you're watching now. So, what is the Mystery Monster Manual? What's it all about? Well, you might have seen I did some other videos, but I don't really count them for this. So this is actually season 2 of the Mystery Monster Manual. You can actually find the original first season on my TikTok, where I ended up basically covering 20 random monsters from the Monster Manual, and ended up covering them all and going into a bit of detail and having just some fun with it, talking about the general differences and what's going on with them and all of that stuff. So, what is the Mystery Monster Manual, and what is the whole sort of format for this video? Well, simply put, the entire format, the idea behind it is that I am going to pick a random monster from the Monster Manual of Dungeons & Dragons, or something else, who knows, we'll end up getting into that a bit later. Sometimes I homebrew them, sometimes I like to talk about them in a bit more detail, all of that stuff, and that's why it's a mystery, because you don't know what you're going to end up getting for the next episode, and it's fun. Yes, the name is in the title, but that's so that way then when people see this in the future, they can go through it and keep track of all the different monsters, and it means that if you're wanting to learn about a different monster in D&D, it's easy enough to keep track of it all. So that's a brief summary, and if you like the sound of it, please do give this thing a like, please give this channel a follow, subscribe, whatever, just because of the simple case that it's an easy way to keep track of all of this stuff, and, you know, YouTube algorithm, metrics, all of that stuff. But let's get into it, because today we are talking about the Nightmare. So the Nightmare, what is it? Well, for those of you who are unaware, it's an absolutely amazing creature, but quick show of hands, how many of you do actually know about the Nightmare? I see a few of you over there do know about it, and that's great to see, but for those of you who don't, let's catch you up to speed about this creature, because I love the Nightmare. The Nightmare is such an amazing creature from the Monster Manual. It's just a creature of myth that is quite well known depending on what sort of either religious studies you've ended up doing or mythologies you've ended up looking into, and it's just a beautiful creature. So, for those of you who have never seen a Nightmare before, let's look at it. Because look at this thing! It's glorious! I mean, I love everything about the design. It's just great. It's not only just a cool black stallion, for those of you who've ended up watching Lord of the Rings and everything. This is very much inspired by a Frisian, for those of you who are unaware of horses. They are the classical black stallion that a lot of your evil kings and evil forces ride. They are great, giant horses. But these ones are even better. Why? Because everything's on fire! Who doesn't like that? That's so cool! Like, the mane's on fire, the hoof's on fire, it's breathing fire. Yes, it's a horse, but it looks like it's gonna end up kicking you straight into the 9 hells and laugh while it does it. So, in terms of design, chef's kiss perfection. The Nightmare is just, it's just a thing of beauty. And I know it's gonna sound like I'm fangirling, but guess what? I'm gonna do this for pretty much any monster, because I love monster designs. They're just cool, they're just fun to look at. And just, like, I love it. So cool. But let's talk a little bit about it, and let's end up talking about the stats and all of that stuff. Because this little horse right here ain't just for looking pretty. No, my friends. This thing is going to end up kicking you into next week. So let's get into the stats of this thing. Yes, I have the Monster Manual with me, because, I mean, I want to make sure I get this right for you guys. So, follow along with me, shall we? The Nightmare is a large fiend of neutral evil. Ignore the chaotic alignment and everything of the monsters. It's a complicated subject. Its armor class is 13. It has hit points of 68 on average. Can end up being a bit more, can be a bit less. And it also has a speed of 60 feet, or flying 90 feet. That's right, this bad boy can fly, which is, it's just fun. Anyway, it's got a strength of 18, which makes sense. I mean, look at the thing. It's built of muscle. I love it. It has a dexterity of 15, aka a +2 modifier, which, you know, it's a horse. I understand it's not acrobatic. I understand it's not really specifically outright dexterous, but it's still fast as anything, so, And then it has a constitution of 16 as a +3 modifier. Now, for those of you who might not be aware, this makes a lot of sense. Horses are actually incredibly durable. Like, yeah, they're still flesh and bone like everything else, but they can surprisingly take a fair amount of damage and just keep going. Side note, don't try this on any actual horse. Like, they're innocent. They don't deserve any mean things happening to them. But yeah, they are surprisingly durable. They have an intelligence of 10, so +0, which makes sense. They're a horse. it's an evil horse, so maybe it could have done with being maybe having a +1. Like, it has to be at least smart enough to recognize evil, but I guess that's what makes it just a straight up 10 in at 0. Like, you know, it's smarter than your average horse, I guess. Which, yeah, makes sense. I mean, looking at it. Yeah. It's got a wisdom of 13, so it's got a +1 to wisdom, which suddenly that whole spiel which I was talking about with intelligence makes a lot more sense. Yeah, it might not be straight up smarter, but it is wiser. Makes sense. And then it has a charisma of 15, aka +2 modifier, which, you know, when you think about charisma for a horse, I mean, yeah, they're pretty and everything, but they're not going to exactly be charming anyone until you remember that intimidation is done through charisma. And suddenly that makes a lot more sense. But with the stats done, let's end up talking about some of the other things, because it's got a couple of immunities. Of course, this thing is immune to fire, because, I mean, look at it. It just looks like it's breathing fire, and it's just going to stomp you into fire. Fire is its whole motif, and I love it. It's great. Very obvious. Passive perception 11, standard. And it also understands abyssal, common, and infernal, but it can't speak it. Which is actually kind of funny, because infernal, it makes sense. It's from the 9 hells, it's fire, it's all of that stuff. And understanding common makes sense again, it's all of that stuff. But abyssal means that it also communicates sometimes, or understands, or works with demons. Which is a bit different, especially in terms of lore, but also really fun. I like it. Like, yeah, you end up having the classic devils end up riding this thing, we're going to end up getting you. But then when you end up putting demons on top of nightmares, like, that's a terrifying concept. It's just great. It's real fun, real different, keeps you on your toes. You never know when you're just going to see a Yugoloth riding a bloody nightmare. Like, who knows? And then let's get into its abilities, its special things, the things that really give it its chutzpah. Anyway, so it has confer fire resistance. That's right, so not only is the nightmare immune to fire damage, or, well, it has fire resistance, but it can also give its rider fire resistance, which is great. Makes it an absolutely epic mount to end up having, because fire resistance is always fun. We'll talk about how to become a rider for this thing in a minute, but yeah, nice ability. Really nice, really flavorful. Works really, really nice. I like it. And it's got illumination, aka it sheds light in a 10-foot radius. It's 10 foot? 10-foot radius and dim light for an additional 10 feet. So it's got about a 20-foot radius of light, essentially. You get what I'm saying? Which, I mean, looking at it, I can imagine it being a glow stick. That works, right? Yeah. And then we get into its attacks, which, I mean, place your bets on what you think its attack's gonna be. You win, it wasn't a hard one, it's its hooves. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? But it's actually a bit more interesting than that. Because the hooves do a +6 to hit, which, you know, handy, very handy. And it also ends up having a little bit of damage caveat. It does 2d8 +4 bludgeoning damage. Oh yeah, and 2d6 fire damage. Which is lovely. Like, you end up getting not only a hoof to the face, but you also then set on fire, which is fun. It's fun. And it also has the ability Ethereal Strike. I don't know about the nightmare, and up to 3 willing creatures within 5 feet of it magically enter the ethereal plane from the material plane, or vice versa. Yeah, that's a powerful one, because that means that not only is this thing hanging out on your material plane, wherever you're at, but the ethereal plane is a whole shebang. It's a whole thing. Being able to just bamf in and out of reality to then end up just going somewhere else and doing something. It's a whole thing. Very powerful in combat. So do keep that one in mind, because, ooh, tasty. But enough about the stats, because now it's time to end up talking about some lore, some history, some interesting things about the Nightmare. Because not only is a Nightmare a cool horse with some pretty impressive stats, oh yeah, forgot to mention it's a challenge-free rating monster. Now, all of this information was gathered from D&D 5th edition, because, you know, at this moment in time of recording, 5.5 situation, it's complicated, and I don't have the money to just keep on buying book after book. And yes, I could end up reading up about it, but literally as of this moment of recording, all that's been revealed currently is really the player's handbook. So, you know, currently not 100% certain on all of the stats going on in the situation. But let's talk about the other cool things about Nightmare. Because a Nightmare while looking cool, while being this absolute beast of a stallion that's going to be able to end up kicking people, setting them on fire, and just bamfing out of existence, it has trauma. Much like any of our adventurers in D&D with a tragic, dramatic backstory, the nightmare is no different, and it's pretty dark. So, first of all, major caveat here, the nightmare, while looking like the absolute perfect mount for any adventurer, unless you're an evil aligned character, ain't gonna work, my friend. It's an evil creature, and it only listens to evil creatures. So if you're a goody two-shoes, those hooves are gonna cave your face in harder than anything. So, keep that one in mind, because while beautiful and majestic, it has set friends that it wants to keep around. If you're too good, you're not getting into the club. Anyway, aside from that, let's talk about now this horse's tragic, dark, emo backstory, which actually isn't so emo, because it really is actually bloody tragic. Because the way that you make a nightmare is rough, okay? And I mean it. This is legitimately, for some people, you may not want to hear this, so if you get slightly upset with slightly gratuitous language of definitions of what goes on into making of something like this, you may want to cover your ears, you may want to look away for a second, because, oh yeah, so here it is, this was your last chance and warning. So the only way that you actually make a nightmare is from a Pegasus. Yeah, you might already have an idea of how that happens. So what happens is Pegasus gets captured, right, by an evil creature, and then it has its wings ripped off it. The trauma of that damage turns the Pegasus evil. It is then filled with rage and malice and wants revenge, not only the creatures that did it, but on the world for allowing such pain to happen to it. Which, oh, my poor baby girl, who hurt you to cause you to be this thing? You might be beautiful as a nightmare, but you didn't deserve that. Just rough. But does make sense. When you think about it, to then create such a steed of dread and evil, yeah, that makes sense. Of course, something like that had to happen to it. And at least it looks cool now. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that this happened, and I don't condone anything to real life animals. But it's D&D, and it's imaginary, and these creatures don't really exist. So, So, other things, cool things to talk about. Now that we've ended up talking about the actual everything from the monster manual that's provided, let's talk about what you can do to incorporate nightmares into your games and have some fun with them. Because, yes, there are some obvious caveats. There's nightmares roaming around the nine hells. A nightmare has ended up coming onto the material plane, is just causing chaos and havoc, and it's up to your adventurers to somehow stop it and calm it down and all of that stuff. But there are some other cool things that you can end up doing to throw into your games to end up making it have just that much more fun. So, a couple of fun things. You could end up having a nightmare has somehow been caught by a king, evil king, good king, doesn't matter. And this royal steed is simply put the royal noble who wants to try and control it, just can't. It's just not working. But they end up having a grand parade where they end up sort of striding around town, and then boom, the nightmare ends up breaking free and just starts going to town, wrecking up shop. Everyone who was at the parade watching all of this grand fanfare and everything, they're just getting run over by the nightmare. Things are getting set on fire, and it's absolute chaos pandemonium, and your adventurers need to stop it. That's just one of the cool things that you could do with a nightmare. Other couple of things, you just have nightmares being part of a demon or devil invasion. That's just a fun thing to do. Always remember that if you're having invasions, have a couple of your large-scale devils and demons just riding these things. And then the fun part is that even if you kill the devil or the demon, the nightmare is still going to go around wrecking shop because it just wants to. Love it. Absolute fun. Really, it's just good. It's just good. It's just a fun method that, yeah, it's a horse. It's a horse on steroids who's also angsty and angry as all hell and just wants to make the world burn, which is just great. Also, other couple of fun things that you could do for a nightmare in your games. You can turn them into a creature of myth and legend by having there just be one, and it being this mythical steed that represents the elemental forces of fire. If you're trying sort of a bit more like, you know, druidic forces of nature sort of campaign, this creature would be an absolutely epic big bad that you could turn into. Now, I understand people would turn around and be like, it's a challenge rating 3, how are you going to turn this thing into a big bad? Depending on your setting, you could do a lot to turn this into a big bad. Obvious one, make it intelligent, make it actually be able to speak and understand common and come up with plans and be malicious. Like, giving it spell casting and having all of the spells be fire related, and having it being that its hooves end up imprinting into the ground and it just ends up creating earthquakes and ends up motes of lava and fire just burst out everywhere. This thing could be very much a representative of true forces of chaos and evil, and oh, love it. That's how you turn it into a big bad. You don't have it being super smart and super planned out and all of that stuff that a humanoid evil character would represent. Instead, have it be intelligent enough to come up with plans, but it doesn't really care. It's more a force of nature. It's a force of destruction. It just stands and everything's on fire. It walks and fire just erupts. Earthquakes, mountains shatter in its wake. There's just so much cool things to make a nightmare really fun for your game. So keep all of that stuff in mind. But that was the nightmare. This was the Mystery Monster Manual. If you enjoyed this, if you've ended up managing to watch all of this thing through, please, 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 could you give this thing a like? Could you give this channel a subscribe? I greatly appreciate it because, you know, the YouTube algorithm, pain in the butt. Don't forget to also leave a comment or share it with your friends because, again, YouTube algorithm. Also, like, you know, if you've got a DM, you've got friends who like D&D, all of that stuff, just pass it on, let them see it, let them have some fun. Have them try and guess what the next monster is going to be. And write down in the comments what you think the next monster should be, because while it might not be the next video you see, that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. I'm going to be covering a lot of different creatures. We have no idea as of this moment how long the Mystery Monster Manual Season 2 is going to last. The first one was 20 monsters. It might be 20 this one round. Don't know. We'll see how it goes. But again, I hope you enjoyed this one, my friends. I hope you enjoyed the absolute majesty that is the nightmare, and I hope you enjoyed this Mystery Monster Manual. Again, give it a like, give it a subscribe, all of that stuff. I hope you have a great day. Hope to see you all again soon, my friends. Until the next one, have a good one. Bye-bye.